can you believe it, guys? Switch 2, just a week away. Now, I might have had some choice words to say about the Switch 2 in a previous video, but in spite of that, I did actually end up pre-ordering one. Now, before you call me a traitor, sellout, shill, yada yada yada, whatever, hear me out. I only got one because A, I didn't even expect to be able to pre-order one at all, and B, GameStop lets you trade in your old systems to cut off a pretty good chunk of the price. That old Switch 1 though, eh? Sure is quite overdue for a retirement. It is truly crazy to think that this thing is over 8 years old now, and I mean, it sure is showing its age. I mean, technically it ain't even over for the Switch 1 yet. We still got Prime 4 and Pokemon Legends ZA to look forward to, and yeah, those are getting Switch 2 versions, but they have been built for Switch 1 this whole time. Now, I was a little bit late to the party with the Switch, admittedly. I didn't get one until about Christmas 2019, but those last 5 years have been pretty fun. Growing up, I loved handheld games more than console games, even. The 3DS is probably still my favorite system of all time, so it kinda makes sense that I'd gravitate pretty heavily towards the Switch. Do I think it's perfect? Hell no, and I am looking forward to some of the genuine improvements the Switch 2 will make over it. There is no denying, though, that in spite of any hardware shortcomings, the Switch has had probably one of the most insanely cracked libraries of all time. And I don't even mean just first-party games. I'm a veteran of the Wii U era, and we were lucky to get anything even remotely as notable as some of the stuff that came to Switch 2. Like, Minecraft was probably the biggest third-party release of the Wii U, and didn't happen until nearly 3 years into the system's life. Of course, is it ideal to play some of those third-party games on Switch 1? Depends on what kind of game it is. Lower-end and indie games have been perfect for the system, but, you know, I have a Steam Deck if I want to play something more intense. But also, you know, Switch 2 does seem to be working to fix that as well. Today, though, I want to take a step back and look at the games I played on Switch that were most impactful to me specifically. Doesn't even have to be a Switch exclusive, just any game that I happen to put a significant amount of time into, or even feel particularly strongly about, that I happen to play primarily on Switch. Or maybe even a re-release that I'd already played on a different console. There are a lot of games for me to talk about, but I think it's also important to bring up some of the more popular games that I haven't played. I have not played every Switch game, not even close. By no means do I try to go out of my way to get every single first-party or exclusive game for the system, because that would be absolutely ridiculous and costly as hell. This does include stuff like Splatoon 2 and 3, most Mario spin-offs, any 2D Kirby game, Pikmin, Pokemon, and a lot of ports, remakes, remasters, etc. There are plenty of other games that I have at least tried a little bit of, but I don't think I've put a substantial amount of time into, such as Astral Chain, but I'll leave those out as well. So if your favorite game doesn't happen to show up on the list, don't take it as a personal attack, it's just that I probably haven't gotten around to it yet. I think a good place to begin would be, of course, my most played Switch game, which would be, of course... Actually, I don't know about that one. Let's come back to that one later. What's the second most played? Wait, for real? But I just uploaded a video where I talk about Fate Stay Night. I can't do that 2 videos in a row, that'd be sacrilegious. Well, I guess I'll keep it brief then. Yeah, somehow my second most played Switch game of all time is, Fate Stay Night. I mentioned already that I have nearly 100 hours into it because, well, it's a long visual novel. What do you expect? I definitely think this is worth talking about here, though, because I would probably not have played through Fate Stay Night to the end, or I guess read through to the end, had this remaster not happened on Switch specifically. In fact, let's just bring up visual novels as a whole really quickly. The Switch is a great visual novel machine. They're lower intensity, making them easier to run on the system while still looking okay. It's incredibly easy to bring them anywhere you go, as any book would be, naturally. And there's plenty on the system as well. I know a lot of people who have gotten into certain visual novels like Danganronpa through the Switch version specifically. So it really makes sense that when I eventually got around to reading Fate, it was through the Switch version. And this isn't the only visual novel that I own on Switch. I've also bought Coffee Talk, Ace Attorney Trilogy, The Somnium Files, DDLC Plus, and most recently I've been reading Witch on the Holy Night as part of my Type Moon Deep Dive. Visual novels making up a pretty big chunk of a handheld systems library is of course nothing new. They were insanely popular on the PSP and Vita, but it's great to see them finally reach a more worldwide audience, especially with the Switch. And given that I've finally warmed up to visual novels these past few months, I'll definitely continue to read more of them on Switch. On the topic of genres that are insanely popular in Japan, but took a while to get popular over here, how about we just cover most RPGs right now? Provided that they can actually run well on the system, RPGs have been great on Switch. Not only have we gotten a plethora of first-party ones, but also plenty of third-party ones, ranging from ports to straight-up console exclusives, albeit timed exclusives in a lot of cases. While they might look kinda bad, the Switch versions of Dragon Quest 1 through 3 were how I got into Dragon Quest a couple years back. And Dragon Quest XI is still one of the best games on the system. Haven't beaten it yet though, I will eventually, because it is phenomenal based on what I've played so far. Persona 3, 4, and 5 eventually released on Switch. Shin Megami Tensei 5 did something really unique and let Switch players beta test the game nearly 3 whole years before it actually released. The Witcher 3 certainly got a Switch version. I don't know, I actually haven't played too many RPGs on Switch from start to finish. Like, I do own Monster Hunter Rise and Generations, but I have not gotten into those properly at all yet. For some reason, I own Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 10, 10-2 on Switch, even though I'd probably just prefer to play the original versions of those games. There are 2 RPG series, though, that I think truly excelled on Switch. 2 first-party series, anyway. Fire Emblem and Xenoblade. Fire Emblem... Okay, I actually have to come clean here for a moment. The 3DS trilogy of Fire Emblem games is probably my single favorite trilogy in all of gaming. I mean it. Awakening is to this day my second favorite game of all time. Not just Fire Emblem game, a game in general. And depending on how I feel when I replay Breath of the Wild later this summer, it could have a chance at becoming number 1. Fire Emblem Fates, in spite of all the criticisms that even I have with it, is a very important game to me personally, on a very deep level that goes just beyond the quality of the game. I will admit it does in some ways reek of missed potential, and the story is pretty bad, but I will always go to bat for these games, no matter what. If they ever remaster this game with all 3 routes included and maybe a better script, I will be there day 1 to buy it. And Echoes just makes me emotional thinking about it every single time. I truly love that game. It was actually tied with Awakening among my top 5 favorite games at one point, and if it wasn't for the map design being so bad, it probably could still stand in that ballpark. So naturally, when Three Houses was announced and eventually released, I knew that I need to play it ASAP. I figured there's no way this wouldn't be one of my favorite games of all time. Eventually I got around to it, and took me quite a few months to finish, and I felt like I was forcing myself to love it in a sense. Yeah, I'm one of those Fire Emblem fans. I'm the weirdo who doesn't like Three Houses. No, okay, that's not true. I actually really do love Three Houses in a lot of aspects. I think it is pretty fun. It's just, it doesn't match what I personally enjoy about Fire Emblem, much in the same way that, say, Fate Zero doesn't match what I love about Fate Stay Night. You know, the character's story and tactical gameplay itself is all still great, but I just really do not like the day-to-day life system. It is not for me, and I don't really like how a lot of people want it to become a normal part of the series going forward. I really do like it in Persona, but it just doesn't do it for me here. I'd still say Three Houses is better than Fates overall, but I don't know, I think if given the choice, I'd actually prefer to replay Fates over it, mainly because I just haven't played Fates in way longer, but also because I just kind of prefer the pacing of it. Engage, on the other hand, is a bit more interesting because that actually does match what I prefer in Fire Emblem. But I think it's a case of the right game releasing at the wrong time. My love of Fire Emblem has dwindled significantly since graduating high school. If this game had released around, let's say, 2017, I have no doubt that I would have finished it, maybe even multiple times, but I don't even think I've gotten halfway through it. I don't think it's the game's fault. I think it's actually a phenomenal game and matches a lot of what I loved about Awakening. I think it was just a me problem, which sucks because I was really hyped for this game. I even bought the special edition and everything. I have wanted to get back into Fire Emblem more lately, so there is a chance I could go back and finish this one soon, although no guarantees on that one. Oh, and I guess we technically have the Shadow Dragon, the Blade of Light re-release, but let's not talk about that. Xenoblade, though? Oh boy, have I got a lot to say about that. Xenoblade 1, as I have said on this channel, is one of my favorite games I've beaten in the last 5 years. Now, the Switch version isn't the first way I ever played Xenoblade 1. I actually had the weird 3DS version as a kid, but I never got more than halfway through it. In fact, I actually liked playing it a lot more on the Switch than on 3DS. I don't know, just kinda clicked with me more there. I haven't played a ton of the new post-game story yet, but I will eventually get to it. I can't really recommend Xenoblade 1 to everybody. I've seen plenty of people bounce off of it, but if it seems like something you would like, absolutely go for it. Now, Xenoblade 2, I have only played about 10 hours of, and I do not want to make a judgment call on that game when I'm so early in. I am well aware that the game makes a terrible first impression, and it also gets better after 10 hours, but I actually wouldn't even say that my time with the first 10 or so hours was awful or anything. Confusing? A little bit. But I am definitely planning to give more of the game a chance at some point later on. The reason I'm holding off, though, is a bit weird. I actually kinda wanna play Xenogears before I beat any other Xenoblade game now. That'll take a while, but it'll probably be worth it. Xenoblade X, I haven't actually bought the Switch version yet, but I liked it on Wii U. What I played of it, anyway. Xenoblade 3, though? Oh my god, I have not beaten this one yet. I had a lot on my plate in life when it released, but god, do I need to go back and finish it at some point, because it has been immaculate what I've played so far. There's no slow opening, it just starts, hits the ground running, and so far hasn't let off the gas pedal yet. It is by far the best Xenoblade game, and probably one of the top 5 best Switch games. Does rely a lot on knowledge of past games, but if you can only play one Xenoblade game, or one Xeno series game, make it this one. On the topic of a heavy-hitter trilogy that also features a weird spin-off, let's talk a little bit about Bayonetta. I have been a huge fan of the Bayonetta series for a long time now. Now, technically, my first exposure to Bayonetta gameplay was a demo of Bayonetta 2 on the Wii U, back before the Switch even released, or was even announced. But a little bit after that, I played through all of Bayonetta 1 on Xbox 360, and I absolutely loved it. I still love it to this day. And the Switch version is probably my go-to version now. Well, either that or the PC version. Depends on what I feel like using that day. When I got around to playing Bayonetta 2 all the way through, I didn't quite like it as much as the first one, but there's a reason for that. I played it on very easy mode, which might be the biggest criminal offense I've ever committed. But that was back in 2018, though. Fast forward to the beginning of 2023, when I decided to finally replay it in Bayonetta 1. Bayonetta 1 I kind of feel mostly the same about, but Bayonetta 2? Oh boy, does that game hit different. It might technically be a bit of a step back from Bayonetta 1 in terms of complexity and depth, but as a straightforward, streamlined experience, it is so much fun. If I'm ever itching to go back to any Bayonetta game, chances are it'll end up being 2. Now, as for Bayonetta 3, I was of course very hyped for it from reveal to release. I honestly thought it would end up being my Game of the Year 2022. Whew, boy how wrong I was. Alright. Technically, Bayonetta 3 did end up being my least favorite of the Bayonetta trilogy, but I still think it's an honest-to-God incredible game. It definitely has flaws, and is probably the most inconsistent of the trilogy, but man, the highs of Bayonetta 3, probably some of the highest in the whole series. And hey, if there's any game I am definitely looking forward to seeing improved graphically on Switch 2, it's Bayonetta 3, because God, that game has no business running on Switch 1. As for Cereza and the Lost Demon, well, I haven't played it yet, and I'm not sure if and when I will. I'm sure it's a fine game, but it just didn't seem worth dropping $60 on. And maybe I'll get it on sale one day, who knows. But replaying Bayonetta 1 and 2 on Switch really has me thinking, you know what I really loved using the Switch for? Revisiting older games that I had already played, or even newer games I'd already played. I can think of a ton of games that I maybe owned or had already finished on another system that I couldn't resist buying the Switch version of. You know, assuming it's not too compromised graphically. I feel like I have to add that asterisk to every sentence in this video. There's a lot of games like this for me. One Shot, Persona 4 Golden, Cuphead, Sonic 1 and 2, Final Fantasy 7-8, Chrono Cross, Celeste, Sonic Mania, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, Okami, just to name a few. And that's not even getting into a lot of collections, which, okay, those do range in quality sometimes. There are some great collections on Switch, no doubt. Stuff like some of the Castlevania collections, for instance. But, you know, there's also some collections that are just okay. They just get the job done. Stuff like your Sonic Origins or your Mario 3D All-Stars. A little overpriced, maybe a few problems here and there, but, you know, they're fine ways to play. Now, I myself don't own any Switch collections that are considered bad, per se, but I have heard some horror stories out there. I guess the Switch Online retro game catalog fits into this category here. It definitely has some problems. It's pretty bad that you can't own any of them, and the N64 emulation on launch was terrible, but I did play some pretty great games through this service. Demon's Crest is the first one that comes to mind for me specifically, because this is a game that I probably wouldn't have played otherwise, but absolutely ended up loving. I also played through the entirety of Kirby Superstar with somebody else through the online multiplayer, which, I mean, that has its problems too, but I mean, it's Nintendo Online, what do you really expect? I am definitely looking forward to the GameCube stuff, and I'm glad they're not completely ditching the library like they do with every new Nintendo release. Before I jump into some heavy hitters, how about one honorable mention? Yeah, more than one actually. I'm realizing post-editing that I forgot to talk about a few games. While I still haven't finished it yet, I have really liked the little bit of Hades that I've played thus far. I still keep thinking to myself, when am I gonna go back to it eventually? It's gotta be one of these days. Florence was, interesting, I suppose. The Switch version of Limbo is how I finally got around to playing it, which, oh god, I haven't actually finished this game yet. I really need to do that at some point. The Panzer Dragoon remake was actually pretty disappointing, but it's still a great game at heart. Radiant Silvergun, who the fuck am I kidding? I'm not gonna have the skill to ever finish this game. Hollow Knight was the very first game I ever bought with my own money earned through a job, and I loved it so much. It was just such a great time from start to finish. Absolutely worthy of the hype. One of the best modern Metroidvanias for sure. I'm not the biggest Kirby fanatic, but Kirby in the Forgotten Land was such a welcome surprise that I am very glad we got. It took a while for Kirby to hit 3D, but it was so worth it in the end. I cannot wait for the next one. BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle? I brought it to a friend's house once, I guess, and we had some fun, but that's about all I can say about it. Puyo Puyo Tetris. I'm not the biggest Puyo Puyo fan, but I have stated before on this channel that I absolutely love Tetris. It's one of my top 10 favorite games of all time. So naturally, I had a lot of fun with Puyo Puyo Tetris, what I played of it anyway. Okay, so out of all the heavy hitters, when it comes to Nintendo's single biggest one, Mario, he has had a very interesting run on the Switch, per se. I mean, it certainly started out strong with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which post-DLC has risen to become one of my favorite games of all time. And hey, within that same year, we also got Odyssey, which, while not my favorite 3D Mario, is definitely still one I'd be willing to go back and replay. But after that, things get a little bit rocky. Mario spin-offs on the Switch were, well, they were certainly something. Like I said earlier, I haven't played most of them, so I can't really comment on it, but one that I actually can comment on is Mario Party Superstars, which I have had a lot of fun over the years with. One of my friends does pretty regular live streams, and I often join her for Mario Party games, where I proceed to lose my shit frequently.
It'd be so funny if you accidentally used the fucking golden pipe right now.
That would be pretty funny, but it's not gonna happen. Oh fuck! Oh no! Oh no! I thought it was gonna give me like a fucking confirmation text. I thought it was gonna like say, "Are you sure you want to use this?" I didn't think it just jumped straight to the fucking thing.
Just roll it. Let's move on with our lives.
Roll the dice, class.
It's
Let's see what you get.
after all that.
Mario Maker 2 also certainly provided some fun hours until I stopped playing it. This does tie into a problem a lot of Mario spin-offs on Switch had. They either needed a little more content at launch or better post-launched support. I mean, Mario Maker 2 might be a better game than Mario Maker 1 on paper, but Mario Maker 1 was a Game of the Year nominee. Mario Maker 2 was just the sequel to Mario Maker. That's kind of it. At least 2D Mario is able to end things on the Switch very strong with Wonder, which, while not my favorite 2D Mario by any means, was a very welcome surprise at the end of the day. So yeah, Mario, a little bit weird on the Switch, honestly. You know, you had some very massive highs, like Bowser's Fury, Odyssey, and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, but also some very weird middle-of-the-road points, and even low points, to some extent. And I think you can kind of say the same about the biggest Switch game. Third biggest Switch game. Wait, let me talk about the second biggest one first. I did not get sucked into Animal Crossing New Horizons as much as most people did because, well, I played it a year after launch. That's probably reason enough. I mean, what I played was fine, but man, I remember playing New Leaf religiously back in junior high, and that game was great. New Horizons? Didn't really put a whole lot of time into it, and that's kind of all I can say. But back to the topic at hand, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. God, do you remember the pre-release for this game? That felt like an event that everybody was in on. It was just such a weird time, but also such a magical time. Throughout all the hype and disappointment, it was just... Man, it's gonna be weird when we get to the next Smash Bros. Game, because you know it's inevitable. And I gotta say, the first year after launch for Ultimate was probably the game at its very best, both in terms of excitement around it and competitively. The Smash community truly felt united in 2019 on all fronts. It was just such a great time, let me tell ya. And then 2020 happened. I don't think I need to remind you all what happened within the competitive space around the middle point of 2020, but even then, I don't really feel like the competitive Smash Ultimate community really recovered in the following years. It's felt like it's been on its last legs for a while now. You remember how people could clearly tell Smash 4 was dying at a certain point? It feels like we've extended that way longer with Ultimate. And it also gave way to some of the most toxic and horribly divisive community arguments I've ever seen. Now, I do think nature is starting to heal, because I didn't see a single X years have passed since the worst Smash edition of all time so far. But, it was not fun to be on the front lines of discourse with this game. I really do love Byleth's inclusion. They're extremely fun to play, but there's no denying that it marked a major turning point for Ultimate, and not for the best. Min Min arguably made things even worse because I can't even defend how she plays, it's just not fun. Steve was no doubt a hype inclusion, but has also pretty much become this game's equivalent of Smash 4 Bayonetta. Sephiroth? I got no complaints, that's the best Smash edition of all time, not even close. Pyra and Mithra? You know what, I don't give a fuck what anyone says. These are my mains, and I find them to be incredible additions. Kazuya Mishima. I got no complaints here, actually. That's dope as fuck. Sora. I mean, he does definitely deserve to be in Ultimate, considering he was canonically the most requested Smash character of all time, but, how he plays certainly leaves a little bit to be desired. And we haven't gotten any balance patches since late 2021. We really could use one right about now, though, not gonna lie. I mentioned in a previous video that I actually really loved the single-player content of Ultimate, which I seem to be very much alone in saying. But once that well ran dry, I'm kinda just left with a game that slowly gets less and less fun to play. I don't really like sticking with the same character for an extended period of time, which is why I've gone from maining Incineroar to Lucina, to Wolf, to Link, to Sephiroth, to Cloud, to Ridley, to now Pyra and Mithra, and Dr. Mario on the side, weirdly enough. I really do hope the next Smash game is more focused and able to sustain a longer lifespan, because that's really what we needed for Ultimate above all else. But hey, I'm not opposed to Sakurai getting a little bit of freedom, finally. Alright, there's two franchises left that I really want to talk about here, and they happen to be my two favorite game franchises of all time. Starting with my second favorite, we have Zelda, which certainly had one hell of a run on Switch. I mean, it literally opened up with my favorite game of all time, which... Okay, I actually don't think I can talk about Breath of the Wild on here because I didn't play Breath of the Wild on Switch, I played it on Wii U. And technically, it is a Wii U game that was just ported up to Switch, so I mean... I guess we'll just have to wait and see how I feel about it after I finish replaying it on Switch 2. Now, as for everything in between, well, I didn't play the Link's Awakening remake, didn't play Echoes of Wisdom, didn't play Cadence of Hyrule. I did play a little bit of Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. Now, I absolutely love the first Hyrule Warriors game. I've put a lot of time into it, but I could never really click with any of the Warriors games that I played on Switch. Oh, right, I actually forgot to talk about Fire Emblem Warriors earlier. I don't know. Couldn't really get into it, and I really don't like the roster in that game. Three Hopes I played a little bit of, but nowhere near enough to make a firm judgment. And Age of Calamity, I just couldn't get into, which sounds weird considering it's based on Breath of the Wild, and I love the first Hyrule Warriors, but I don't know, I don't think I could really find the motivation to keep playing it. I did play a little bit of Skyward Sword HD, which I am a huge Skyward Sword defender, but from what I've seen, I don't think I can ever go back to the Wii version now. For all the controversy surrounding the $60 price tag and the amiibo bullshit, Skyward Sword HD really is the poster child of how you do a proper remaster. Well, one of the poster childs, but we'll get back to that in a moment. That just leaves us with that one other game, Tears of the Kingdom, which, like Breath of the Wild, I will in fact be replaying on Switch 2 soon. And you know what? For all that has been said about this game, I won't deny that the 5 days in a row I spent playing it from start to finish were no doubt some of the happiest I've ever been playing any game. I did not want to stop playing Tears of the Kingdom a single time until I was 80 hours into it. And that's certainly rare for me. You know, I truly don't think I've sunk myself into a game that much since, well, Breath of the Wild. When I do get around to replaying it, though, I'm going to be doing something a little different. I'm not going to treat it necessarily as its own entirely separate game, but more just the second half of Breath of the Wild. Imagine Breath of the Wild was secretly twice as long, and once you beat Calamity Ganon, you get a 7-year time skip where the events of Tears of the Kingdom happen. The reason I'm doing this is just so I can try to avoid fatigue and burnout as much as possible. Maybe I can trick my brain into thinking it's a supermassive 160-ish hour game. I don't know. We'll see how well it works when the time comes. I really don't want my opinion on these games to go down, but maybe it's unavoidable. Who knows? And that, of course, brings me to my favorite game franchise of all time, Metroid. You know, for the first few years of the Switch's life, Metroid really lacked any kind of presence. Until 2021, we really only had the Prime 4 teaser to go off of. And it is great to finally know that it's releasing this year, but it isn't out yet, obviously, and I won't be playing it on Switch 1 either, so maybe I'll save it for a full review later this year. Outside of the inevitable Prime 4 release, though, there are only about 2 games to talk about. But, oh god, do I have a lot to say about those games. As I said earlier, Skyward Sword is a great baseline indicator for what a good remaster should be, but Prime Remastered is the gold standard for going above and beyond. It may not have much in the way of gameplay overhauls, but I mean, Prime 1 was already pretty great as is, so I don't think tampering with the gameplay too much was super necessary. I mean, yeah, there's ways you can improve the pacing, I guess, but that is more than made up for by how jaw-droppingly gorgeous this game is. I really do hope this gets a Switch 2 enhancement of some kind, because it already looks about as great as Mario Kart World does. You know, all you gotta do is just bump it up to 4K and increase the texture quality and maybe add HDR and bam, we're golden. I wasn't even really all that big a fan of Prime 1 before now, but when I finally played the remaster, it just clicked for me so well. And they priced it at only $40? God damn, Nintendo, why can't you be this generous all the time? Prime 1 Remastered, probably the single best remaster on the Switch. But, in terms of my single favorite Switch game, or Switch exclusive, I suppose, that would be none other than Metroid Dread. I may have already said my piece on this game a year and a half ago, roughly, but it all still holds up, honestly. I truly just love this game so much. It really does feel like it was meant for me. And there definitely is some bias, then, that factors into that, but I can't really help it, honestly. This was a rare case of me having unbelievably high expectations for something, and it's somehow exceeding even that. Currently, I would put it as my number 4 favorite game of all time, and it honestly might as well be tied with number 3. It is also tied with Super Metroid as my single favorite Metroid game of all time, which I guess makes number 3 through 5 on my favorite games of all time a 3-way tie. I'll think more about that another day. Sure, not everyone took to it as kindly as I did, but you can't deny that seeing a Metroid game get nominated for Game of the Year is one hell of a sight to behold. Metroid Dread, without question, earns its spot as my favorite game that I played on the Switch. And that does it for today's video. Thought it would be nice to get a sort of swan song of sorts out for the Switch before the Switch 2 releases. I don't think I've ever done a video like this before. Heck, I didn't even write a script for it, which is something I almost always do for my videos. If it ends up doing well, though, which a lot of my recent videos seem to have done, I wouldn't be opposed to doing more of it in the future. When I do get my hands on the Switch 2, I will be sure to give it my initial impressions and a semi-proper review of maybe Mario Kart, among other things. Until then, though, y'all have a good rest of your day, and take care.